So text formulas in Excel. To give you a specific example, sometimes we have like name lists, like here, where you have first names and last names together, and you actually want to have it separate because you want to work with last names, or for example, you want to use that Excel list um, for a basis for then email templates where you only want to use the first names and the email addresses. For example, you want to find out what is like the most popular email provider. So is it Gmail, is it Yahoo? What is the email provider that the users use the most? And for that kind of problems, you can use text formulas. I put here a couple of formulas. For example, left basically does the following: that takes a text and then based on the amount of characters, so here basically numchars gives you out then from the left the first 4 characters. Right basically does the same from the right, so the last 4 characters, but like the numbers of course purely random. You can also say 6 and then it would be 6 here. Trim actually, what does trim do? If there are spaces at the very beginning or the very end, then they get trimmed away, so they go. Yeah? So basically, here there is no space, so nothing changes. But here for John Doe, there is actually a space before the Doe, before the D, and if you trim that, then the space is basically gone. So that's for example very important if you have like text or strings in cells that contain spaces and you want to sort that, then usually the ones with the space in the front, they are in the very beginning. But what you want is that they are ordered or sorted in by alphabet, in an alphabetical order. And then in that case you have to trim those kind of cells to ensure that the first cell is always the first letter of the text and not a space. So that here is actually trim. And len is for the length of the text. For example, here it means basically there are 17 characters in that cell. 9 is basically put in the find formula, and I'm looking here for spaces, and he found a space at the 9th position, yeah, in the formula D6, which is basically exactly the space between the end of my first name and the beginning of my last name, so between the S and the uppercase B. It's in position 9. And then there's another function called mid, and then here you can say the start character and then the amount of characters that you want to extract. So here he starts on the 4th character and extracts 4 characters. Yeah, so that's basically then the WTHIA. And then there's another formula called concatenate, and it basically aggregates or concatenates as many cells as you want. So here I concatenated D6 and E6, and you can see there's basically a new string coming out, which is then the addition of both strings. That's actually also very interesting when you have to let's say first name and last name, and you actually want to have a name. So exactly what we have here in column D, if you want to build that out of a list of first names and last names, you can do it with concatenate. We will do that later actually. Yeah, so this was find, this here is mid, and this is concatenate. So what does it all mean? How does left, right, trim, length, and so on help me to derive first name from last name here? So to derive that now, a little bit of space, put in here first name and here last name, and then a little bit more space. And then basically the idea is to now fill in the first names, which is like Matthias in here and Bellman in here. So to do that, we use a function which is actually a combination of the things that you see on the right. It's, as you know, that length is 17. Then we need something where, let's say we could, for example, say, we can, for example, take left and can say text, and number of charts could be this minus this. Yeah, so find was where the space is, and the length is the total length. So if you subtract that, then what you will get is Matthias. No, that's the first name. If I do that, then you can see it only works to some extent. Why is that? Because actually we don't need length. We only need n6. That's where the space is. And then the question is, do we need -1 because of the space? Let's check that. Yeah, we need -1. Otherwise we would have to trim it to get rid of the space behind the S that was not visible. So now we get values here because he's referring to the field on the right, the cell on the right, which is in here. So that's also another old trick to add up the formulas. Just take basically this formula, and instead of n6 you just fill in that formula, and then you get Matthias, and when you do it now, then it works. So let's do it now for the last name. Here several options. One is of course to say right, and then do something like 17 minus the space, and that's actually Bellman. Yeah. Here we have the same problem now, so what I do is M6 is this one, which I put in here without the equal sign, and then find instead of n6. So that's basically then the formula. So write d6 length of d6 minus find the space in d6. You then get all the last names. No? And as I always love the pure values, what you should do actually is then to copy that and paste it as values. So now it's in the pure names. Okay. Let's reverse that actually and check if here it looks like there could be another trim needed, because it looks like there's a space. So let's check that by adding here +1. So now actually there's another space, so that's not right. -1, and now it works. Huh? So if I go up here, then that's not working. But if I go down, it works. So how come? Apparently there is a double, yeah, there's a double space between the names here. See, sometimes you discover these kind of things when you then work with the data. So how could you fix that right now? It's another interesting fix. It's an easy replace. If you find a space, if you find a double space, you replace it with a space. Replace all, 20 replacements. Now you can see that the names here are cut. So I bring down the old formula and now it works. And now I don't have the space anymore, and if I go in here, then you can see there's only one space between the names. Okay. So to finish that, now let's do the other way around. You want to combine first name and last name and build a concatenated name column. So let's call it name again. If I would now use concatenate and concatenate those two, then actually I get a new column with the two strings added together. The problem is there's a space missing. Either you add it behind the first name, but that I think is not super clean Excel formula coding. So what makes more sense, and actually what is my preferred way to work with strings, is to say I want to have that and then have a space and then that. So that's actually then the formula with a space in between. Yeah, and then if I also want to build email addresses, I could also say, for example, here I want to have a point, and I want to have here an @ sign, and then, for example, an email provider. I can also now type a dummy one in, is Gmail. So now you can see it's matthias.berman@gmail.com, and I can build email addresses out of that. Yeah, so working with concatenate is cool, but what I actually recommend is to work with the emperor's end, and then build the kind of new strings that you want to have out of that.